Hey out there. Want to talk about something cool? You came to the right place. Dark Loops. And why is this so good? Hello, and welcome to Dark Loops. Why is this so good? A podcast in which scholarly, creative, over-the-top fans look out into pop culture, find something that makes them drop to the knees and say, oh my god, why is this so good? I'm your host, Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher from Illinois State University. And in tonight's episode, we discuss Hayao Miyazaki's beautiful, groundbreaking masterpiece, Princess Mononoke. Joining me in tonight's conversation are some amazing Princess Mononoke fans. Please introduce yourselves and tell us, what is your favorite Princess Mononoke memory?
I'm Dr. Eric Wesselmann. I'm a social psychologist at Illinois State University, interested in all things nerdy, particularly within this context, the interface between psychology, narratives, and culture. Longtime anime fan. Also a member of the WGLT Psych Geeks.
Yay!
My favorite memory of the film. I've been watching anime a long time before it came out. I was a member of ISU's anime club. We were, watching anime on VHS tapes, bootlegged, fan subtitled. And I remember when I saw this particular film, I'd always kind of known that there were things that I was missing in terms of cultural references when I would watch anime. But this is probably the first anime where I was like, wow, there's a lot of subtext that I'm missing here. Fast forward 15 years, and now I get to teach it. And now I get to learn about all the subtext that I missed.
Fantastic. Let's go on to Tatsu.
Hello, Tatsu Shigeta. I'm a PhD student at Northeastern University out in Boston by way of Illinois State University. So very familiar with Scott and Eric. Nice to be here again. And
nice to have you here.
Yeah, I study how exercise affects the brain. So I get to run people until they almost pass out on a treadmill and see how they do on computer games.
That explains my coming decline.
Well, keep going because you're going to need it.
Exactly.
It's anime. Anime has been just a huge influence, big chunk of my life. I still watch it almost on a daily basis, mostly to keep up my Japanese, but half Japanese, so that's always nice. But also just kind of, Princess Mononoke is just one of those films that really kicked it off for me. It really marks my pre-adolescence. And, it's totally cool for a pre-adolescent child to be watching, arms blown off and heads chopped off and all that. But yeah.
Dude, I was 37 years old when I watched that movie for the first time.
Yeah, sorry.
That was just like yesterday, man. It doesn't even count,
exactly.
Scott. Come on.
But favorite memory. I have many. It's absolutely one of, if not my favorite movie of all time. So I would say a couple memories. One just being ongoing. Anytime I want to get somebody into anime, I point them straight to this film. And they watch the first 10 minutes and that monster comes out of the woods and they know it's on. So there's that. But yeah, second favorite memory is Scott and I actually, when I was doing my master's at Illinois State, we got to teach a class on Princess Mononoke. At least a section of the class was dedicated to it, and I had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, really happy to be here.
Tell them what you did with the pictures of the characters and the popsicle sticks.
We did a little role play, didn't we? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
We had each one of our students in the class. It was a seminar. We had them be a character, and they had to kind of talk through their voice. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, no, great
That's
times.
fantastic. Let's go on to Victor.
Hello, I'm Victor Dandridge, sometimes affectionately called the hardest working man in comics. I am a full-time self-publishing comic creator, podcaster through Hall of Justice podcast. I'm also a video review host through Black, White, and Red All Over, and soon to be new interviewer through a new show called Wednesday Forever that kind of looks back at classic seminal comic book pieces that have come out and the creators behind them.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Wow, my favorite memory is kind of off the beaten path. It's kind of a story, so this one is fun. So Princess Mononoke came out in theaters for a limited duration when I was in high school. And two of my friends and I, we went to go see it, and I was the only one of my friends who could drive. And this is pre-cell phones. So we go to the theater, and we don't realize how long of a movie Princess Mononoke is. We had just heard about it, thought it was going to be cool. So we show up at the theater and we missed the first call time for the movie. It started at 7. We got there at like 7:45. So they're like, no, you can't get in. We're like, oh, wow, that sucks. And it's like, but you can buy tickets for the next one, which doesn't start until 10:30. And we're like, oh my God, that means that we won't get out till like 1 a.m. We're doing it. Let's do this. But between the three of us, we had $1 for the payphone. And funny enough, like that's how far back we're going. This is payphone time. So we had $1. So the rule was everybody had to try a parent. It would ring twice. And if your parent didn't answer, hang up before the answer machine kicked on and it would take our quarter. So we do a full rotation between all three of us. And it's on the last person, their parent answers the phone. And so we're like, would you call our other parents to tell them that we're going to be late because we missed the first screening and we're at the movies? So we're hanging out. We get something to eat. It's like the best time ever. We literally watch the movie. I drop everybody off. One person lives on the north side. My other buddy lives on the south side like I do. So it literally takes forever to get home. And I don't get home till about 2:00 in the morning. And I find that my front door is locked. Not like, oh, the key is locked. We're talking hook on the screen door. I have to wake everyone up in order to be let in. And what makes it so crazy was it was the true epitome of the essence of the movie, where there's not exactly a bad guy, because my parents were highly upset. And they're like, how are you? You missed curfew and blah, blah, blah. I was like, we tried to call you. And they're like, no, you didn't. Luckily, we actually had caller ID. So they went back and they looked at the caller ID and it says from the theater that I tried to call. And I was like, that was me, and you guys didn't answer. So such and such parent was supposed to call you and tell you what happened. And it totally got me off because they're like, all right, you did try to call. It was a miscommunication. We got it. I was like, here's my ticket stuff. Here's this, man. The whole nine. So again, the essence of Princess Mononoke was like my greatest triumph of independence as a teenager. I stayed out and watched that movie without getting in trouble. What's up?
And then in true Eboshi style, you said, next time I'm going to do it even better.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, Rio, how about you?
Sure. My name's Rio Shigeta. I am an actor, voiceover artist, sometimes a Japanese translator. Most importantly, I'm Tatsu's older brother.
The most important thing.
The most important.
A Scorpio. And I'm here for my looks.
On this audio podcast.
It translates through the audio, brother. It's awesome.
That's right.
Yeah, a memory with Princess Mononoke. So like Tatsu said, we grew up with anime. I've been watching anime before I could speak either Japanese or English. But I would say it's sort of an impression that I have. My terrible memory doesn't really allow me to recall such vivid stories as much as just feelings that I got. And I was about 11 at the time that the film came out. And the theme song, Princess Mononoke, of the film was sung by a Japanese male vocalist. His name was Yoshikazu Mira. And he's this countertenor singer, has about 3.5 octaves. And basically, us 11-year-old boys got such a kick out of the fact that this is a guy singing it in this high voice. And later on, reflecting on it, I was like, well, if you think about it, though, like, what does it matter? Number one.
Mm.
Two, like, we were so proud that we could hit these notes. It's 11 boys.
Yes.
And honestly, to the point where we did sing it in choir several times.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And in Japan, you're required to have music class and home ec class. We sang that as a chorus.
All right, so I'm going to embarrass myself and make sure I know what you're talking about. Is that the tune? Da, 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 dee, da, dee, da. Oh, my. Please take
That's
it.
right. That's
Run
right.
with it, man.
Well done. Well done.
I had no clue that was being sung by a man.
Yep.
Oh my God. I'm honest. He has such a beautiful voice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Miyazaki wrote the lyrics to that himself. That's fantastic.
That's not surprising.
No.
Not surprising at all.
At some point, maybe we need to do one of these about Hayao Miyazaki. I mean, Lord have mercy, just the best screenplay writer in my lifetime. I don't care if it's animated, right? One of the things that I think live action movies suffer from is the idea that because I have live action people in front of people, they're going to believe all this stuff, right? Because it's just people. And no, you have to write a good story, right? So, Leandra.
So I'm Leandra Parris. I'm an assistant professor at William & Mary of school psychology, and I study trauma and crisis and coping with bullying. And I do a lot of work around social justice. So I've been very busy lately, building some anti-racist centers and things like that. So my favorite memory, and I always get like a little embarrassed telling people about this because I think it reveals a lot about where I grew up. But I remember being 15 and I grew up close to the mountains and we didn't have cable. We didn't have internet. We were a decade behind the rest of the world. And it was, the millennium was coming and I had this great Camaro and it was a 305 and it was really fast. And I was like, I've got all this power and I can't do shit with it. And so I just remember being frustrated, and we had this really super old TV and what was our playroom, which was basically just like a cement wall with some outdoor carpet flung down. And so I remember going out there, we had 3 channels, and one of them was PBS. And so I turned both knobs to make it come in and the antenna with a tinfoil, and finally got some peace and quiet, and they were showing Princess Mononoke.
No way.
And I was so pumped because I recognized Gillian Anderson's voice. That was the first thing I heard when it came on, and I was a huge X-Files freak, so I immediately was into this. So I had missed the first part of it clearly, but I just remember sitting there and just being completely I had never seen a Studio Ghibli movie up until that point, and just blown away. And I just felt like it was all of the best things that I had been reading in sci-fi. And my mom and I had had a fight, and so she came out, and I was like, oh, this, I'm watching this thing. It's really great. I was like, but I missed the first part of it. So she took me to Family Video, and we re-rented it.
Family Video.
That's awesome. Nothing says healing like Princess Mononoke.
So it was good. It was I didn't know that the arms were gonna get blown off and stuff. So my younger brother, we kind of I finally had to be you need to leave. But yeah,
they're poetic arms. It's poet. It's poetry.
Yeah.
Oh, it was, and I forgot about that. And so my son is 5, and we were watching it this morning just for getting prepared and everything. And that started happening, and I was like, oh, I did it again. I did it again.
Yeah. I gotta say, my favorite memory of Princess Mononoke is how much of a Rorschach test it's been over the course of my adult life to find kindred spirits. So Mononoke came out in, I want to say 98. It was either distributed in the US, I think in 99. And I had a private video store I would go to. They're all private. It wasn't a big one. It wasn't a chain. It was a family video store. I go to their anime section, and I saw this picture of this young teenage guy with dark hair with a pseudo lightsaber in his hand. And they were saying the best thing since Star Wars. Now, I'll give it a try. Well, it had nothing to do with Star Wars, right? It had nothing to do with lightsabers. But for Christ's sake, I sat there and I watched that thing, and my mind was blown every 30 minutes. Every expectation I developed about a character was violated. but it was violated in the most coherent way I've ever seen a screenplay violate expectation. I watched it 3 times over 2 days. I just couldn't get over how good it was. And over the course of my life since then, when I bring up Princess Mononoke and someone gets it, it's not uncorrelated with the coolness and sophistication of their character, dare I say. So all I got to do is say single malt scotch or Princess Mononoke, and I find out if you're cool or not.
Rio says, "Oh, double time friendship." Not even mad at that.
Been there, done that.
And I'm sure you all have tons of memories about this. So we're going to start a series of questions, and I'm going to ask a specific, we'll go around the circle answering. But if these memories get primed by what we're talking about, feel free to bring them up, because I've raised my kids on Studio Ghibli. Kiki's Delivery Service is the best thing for anyone to watch. I had to cover my daughter's eyes quite often with the arms and stuff when she was 5, and then whatever. But no, I've raised my kids on Ghibli, and so we're going to start with Victor. Name a character, man.
Victor,
Lady
Eboshi.
Lady Eboshi is my absolute favorite.
Way.
Yeah.
Hit me like a hammer last night.
I adore her because of the complexity of her position. She's by far one of the most complex characters I think I've ever seen in pretty much any form of literature, because it simultaneously, like, she's got the Magneto complex where simultaneously she is both good and bad without question. Like, and it's not even a matter of you could convince her. She's fully aware of the badness factor that she might represent and doesn't care, because for her the good that she's doing far outweighs it. She's like, I'm nowhere near as bad as if I didn't do this, and this. She's bad with purpose.
That stupid pig.
Beautiful.
I'm the one who should have cursed.
I love that.
Come on. Such a great line. Yeah, Lady Eboshi is my heart, because there's something I adore very powerful female characters. There's not that many, and that's part of the problem, I think, in a lot of features. I literally just showed my daughter both Alien and Aliens to kind of showcase the transition of strength of a female character. And Lady Eboshi, I think, represents like what that transition would have been over 2 movies. She does it in 1, and it's perfect. So
so feel free to chime in on Lady Eboshi.
I just wanted to say, like, kind of going off of that, from a Japanese perspective, you don't see a lot of anime with kind of a leading female character that's wearing. So she's wearing what's called a hakama, which is basically the pant bottoms in a pantsuit of the day. You don't see that in a Japanese anime. She's just wearing it.
Real.
He said that he designed her partially off of a hakubyoshi, which is sort of a Japanese theatrical representation of an actress playing a male role.
Nice.
But
it's fantastic.
So one of very few characters in Miyazaki that wear lipstick and has visible lips. So this dichotomy of femininity and masculinity that exists within her that I believe
I think the things that Miyazaki did with that character are 5th generation feminism. I mean, this is not a person fighting with men.
Right.
Yeah, she knows they're men, but she doesn't care that they're men. They're in her friggin' way. And when I was watching it again last night, she is actually in on Jigo's plan to allow the men of Irontown to be sacrificed in the final battle against the boar. I mean, I gotta admit, when I recognized that last night for the first time, it's like, damn, she's cold, man. But no, there's a. Well, I'll stop there. She was my favorite character as well. Last night when I saw it, I said, "Oh, all roads go through Eboshi."
That's right.
And I just love how it's not a gender neutral character, but it's not a traditional feminist reaction to masculinity. Men don't even matter as far as she's concerned in terms of their gender, and I thought that was stunning. Anyone else on Eboshi? What's that?
I just said damn straight.
That's right.
Damn straight. Okay, Tatsu, favorite character?
I'm gonna have to go in with Jigo.
I love it.
I love
The man with the
Jigo's
plan.
character. You know, he literally does not give AF except for
Yes.
you know, kind of his own pursuit, his own game.
Yes.
But at the same time, he's such an interesting character because you know you see him right away. Ashitaka's on his journey. He knows exactly who he is.
Yes.
He could totally, you know, he could totally you know, F him over. But he doesn't. He doesn't because he thinks it's interesting. He thinks it's entertaining for him to continue on his journey.
Have you ever heard of the Amishi people?
Yeah. Don't worry. I'm not gonna tell anybody.
It's so
but
awesome.
you know, he's that kind of quintessential wise joker. You know, knows a whole lot more than he leads on. He's the comic relief when you need it.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I just love his character, and I think that really in the story, he leads Ashitaka to where he needs to go, right? And purely out of his own self-interest.
Yes.
And that's what I love about him.
So let me ask you guys a question. When I was watching it again last night, I love the scene where he tries to do the play on Eboshi with the pardon from the emperor. And she takes it from him and says, "Hey, ladies, this is from the emperor." And they go, "Oh, who's he? Is he important or something?" And at that moment, Eboshi and Jigo are equivalent, right? They are both completely aware of what the world is now. And what I want to ask is, are they just sort of the same person, opposites? In other words, she's committed to living a life of value that ends up valuing these women and these lepers, whereas Jigo's kind of organized. I got just as much world knowledge, but I'm going to do this to get myself. I just wonder if their equality in intellectual strength but they go opposite ways.
I think you're absolutely right in terms of them being opposites, but it's more than just their perspectives. It's literally everything about them. Where Lady Eboshi is literally like she's an entrepreneur. So she's about building wealth, but it's not just about her. You know, she actually has built wealth, whereas him, I'm just a lowly little monk who wants to acquire some form of wealth. It's the dichotomies between the two of them are huge. He's really only about himself. She's building wealth to give to other people. That's not him at all, despite the fact that how crazy is that? She's this businesswoman that's really looking out for other people. He's a monk that should be far more, you know, about the world and is like, what's in my pocket? Can I get some more? Like,
exactly.
And they're both sociopaths in their own right.
Totally.
So she's using the lepers and the women she's brought in as a justification of her wealth.
Of course.
She has a better story than he does.
I'm empowering them. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Amazing.
She was pretty excited to be able to kill a god, right? I mean, that was
yes.
She could have gone back to save Irontown.
She could have.
Yeah. But she's like, no, I'm on the hunt. And then she is like, pay attention. This is how you kill a god.
That's how you do it. So show no fear.
And that was one of the most straightforward feminist moments, right? Because she's got an audience of men who think that they're badass hunters and they don't know what to do. And she's, okay, guys, chill out, yo. This is how you kill a god. You just don't fear them. And they're all quaking. No, it's really good stuff. Leandra, favorite character?
So I'm actually really glad no one took it yet. So it's actually Taki. So she's the ox driver's wife.
The ox driver.
And I would say she's a secondary character, but she's got some of that feminist too. She's very, you know, she's yelling at her husband and she was like, you did all these things wrong. But then, you know, what's her face is like, I'm sorry, this is, you know, like I should have protected him. That was my role. And she's like, oh no, like if it weren't for you, they would have been killed by wolves. Like she's very gracious, but also super like, don't F with me. And also take herself super seriously. She like has lots of good moments where she's just kind of making sure everyone's got a little levity to the situation and kind of, I think, brings in some of that comic relief, but in a very strong way. Like she rules her little clan of prostitutes and they all listen to her. And then when they're in that crisis moment where the Irontown is being attacked, like she's the only one who's not freaking out. And she was like, chill, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, get your ass in the water. Like she's very even keeled in the middle of this crisis. And I'm sure she's learned some of that from her fearless leader, but I think that she's a funnier feminist, which I really jive with.
Now, she doesn't suffer. I mean, she, up until the end, she's not suffering the stress of leadership, right? Like Eboshi is. And I think that's where Eboshi's one of those people that grew into leadership and it doesn't faze her. The world is what it is and she's going to deal with it. Whereas this character hasn't had that level of responsibility yet. And she comes across as, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but rises to it.
Yes.
Like doesn't even blink. Like when it comes to her, like, yep, I'm gonna run around in my kimono with my hair up and my boobs out, and I'm gonna, take over, and everything's gonna be fine. Like she's just.
Can we just, when you mention it, can we just take a moment to just talk about the brilliant use of contradiction in the screenplay? Nothing stays the same for long. We're so used to seeing a character and thinking we've got them figured out. And then maybe in the third act, there's some epiphany and we feel happy. But nobody in this movie really ends up being who they come across as first, except Ashitaka. And I would argue Ashitaka has no arc.
Eyes unclouded. Eyes unclouded.
I'm going to throw it out there. Ashitaka has no arc. He is what I would call an empathy machine. He goes through the world saying, what's it like to be you today? What's it like to be you today? What's it like to be you today? He's like Shinto incarnate, Buddhism incarnate. He's just living the life of suffering, embracing suffering and moving through it. And I don't find him to change other than, I guess at first he wants to get rid of his curse. But at the end, he just deals with it. I don't know. What do you guys think? That's a pretty bold statement to say.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think Maro is pretty straightforward throughout the whole thing too. Like she knows her place in the grand scheme of everything and has opinions. Yeah. And only by experience can you change her opinion about you, but it still doesn't change the greater scope of how she feels about different entities. Like mankind has proven themselves one way to her, and maybe they're outliers, but she's still not like, nah, all mankind is cool because of you. No, I hate mankind. You're just cool. That's it.
Yeah, right. No, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Anybody else on whether or not Ashitaka has an arc?
I mean, I think the thing with Ashitaka, he's sort of this everyman burdened with the demon mark, he's for narrative. And Ashitaka, if you could argue, is one of the only main characters that doesn't have sort of a self-interest or an evil side, but instead it's sort of external. It's put upon him this sort of hatred, or we could say the demon mark represents, And so for him, he has to, with unclouded eyes, travel the world, but also with the burden of the curse of the evil that is hatred and loathing in the world,
So go ahead. What if we think if Ashitaka's curse is really the curse of caring?
Ooh.
And in other words, Ashitaka never just lets anybody go, right? Ashitaka gets into their life. He takes on their suffering in some way or another, given the time constraints he has. And the curse is the fact that he actually cares. And because he cares, and when you really care, Leandra, you're doing all this social justice work right now. When you really care and you get into it, it's suffering. You take on tons of suffering. You take on tons of anguish and stress. And that is a curse. Comment? Like Scott shut up is totally fine.
No. We don't want to say that. That's
so here's a possibility. Because I suppose, and I mean, I realize it's written, sort of he's the thread that connects everything. But I did sort of feel some affinity towards Ashitaka because of this desire to know people, to find a way to get some sort of balance struck, right? I mean, I guess if he has a journey, his journey is to embrace the world in all of its beautiful ugliness
Hey, you
and
stealing my
try to
lines,
find
man.
a way for it to sustain. Because he comes from a very tight-knit community, very provincial, right? Insular. He is forced out of that community. And so now he has to go fend for himself. And as he meets people, I mean, I love that moment when he talks to Taki, is that her name? You mentioned earlier? Leandra? Huh?
Well, I thought I'd done something
Toki?
bad by bringing him back.
To-
Is that what you-
No.
Taki,
But-
I can't remember if it's Toki or Taki, but Taki,
Okay.
the box
Right.
driver's.
But he's like, no, I actually would like to see where you all are working. And he
Right.
jumps right in there with the bellows, in a very sort of ham-fisted sort of way. But it very much is this, and the entire time he's doing it, he's asking them questions. He's empathizing. He's like, this must be very hard. What is it like to be you? Right? As Scott said earlier.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I kind of defined him as, Buddhism incarnate. It's joyfully embracing the beautifully ugly sorrow that is life and not shying away from it. And for me, he becomes every character's foil, right? Every character gets explored through him. So like when he comes out and says eyes unclouded and Iboshi laughs, that laugh is worth 5,000 words. You are a ridiculous boy. I mean, that just the ability to put that in motion in a screenplay is for me just stunning. Just that laugh, and you get everything about who she is.
I gotta give you some pushback on that one. Though.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Well, in terms of the curse being caring, because I think, and it's easy to forget it because it's so quick at the beginning. We forget the position that Ashitaka has in the village. He's a prince,
yes,
but still is out there fighting, like as a sentry, security guard, even.
Yeah,
because he encounters the demon first and has to warn everybody about what's going on. So his sense of caring even supersedes his quote unquote position as a prince. It's not somebody who is protected. He's about the village, from the onset. So his sense of caring, I think, is definitely that. I think the curse is in fact hatred, but the thing that drives him away from his people is that they don't have that. And the irony is because they should 100% have it against the emperor, because the emperor tried to wipe them out. Yeah. So like they are true wholesomeness, and the curse to him is this really vile thing because he is so anti everything that the curse represents. It is it's so violent, it's so dark. He apologizes for defending his village, but that's what he has to do. Yeah. So it's something really obscure to him to have these feelings of darkness and ire. He's not used to it at all.
So then is the curse really like hatred, or is it tradition? Because you're in that room, and when they're telling Ashitaka, you're excommunicated. The guys are like, isn't there anything we can do? This is our prince,
right?
And the old wise lady's just like, no, sorry, you got to go figure it out, man. And and it's the same with the forest. It's but then you have this catalyst that's breaking tradition, and it's seen, Irontown is seen as this like, no, what are they doing? So I don't know. That's just a thought that I had.
That's a good one though.
Exactly. Let's move on to Rio. Who's your favorite character? Oh, did you someone else want to say something there? Sorry, I was looking down. Rio, who's your favorite character?
Well, I'm glad I prepared 3 because
there you go, man.
Jigo and Toki are taken, but I couldn't choose. I'm so bad at choosing favorites because I just see so many good things in so many of these characters, and they're all just so, I don't know, human. I guess in anime we're very used to seeing these sort of like cardboard archetypes and very expected. What you see is what you get. or with slight variation, you know, a macho man with a heart of gold, or a tiny girl that can bust a train with her foot. But I guess for me, sort of inside outward, the character that I can relate to the most, I think, is Jigo. Yes, he's this lying, scheming cheat of a monk and mercenary, but he's the ultimate pragmatist, you know, and they hold a grudge. Kind of, he flips on a dime very quickly, even when it's like strategic discussion with Eboshi, or you know, being showing this emperor's writ and being laughed at. He's like, okay, that's how it is. At the has gone and done. What can I do? This is how it goes. Can't deal with this, you know. And then sort of externally, a character that I would want to be friends with is probably Toki, you know. She's this badass girl taking care of stuff in the town, and it's she's such a funny foil to her husband Kuroku, who Miyazaki himself says is this guy. I wrote him to kind of be a guy that accomplishes nothing in the whole story.
Box driver.
Intent.
He's a gender placeholder. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Fantastic.
And,
go ahead, man. Go ahead.
I may be stepping on some toes here, but the purest and most good character in the entire movie is Yakul, the red elk.
Yes. Yes.
Not wrong. Not wrong.
Except he ain't trying to run Irontown, man. I mean, if he were trying to run Irontown, he'd have a few more problems, right? I'm just. No, but that is a great character, and the animation of him running away from the samurai and when the horses are chased, that animation is just stunning.
That's just pure Western, isn't it?
Right.
Fair enough.
It really is.
Fair enough.
Love that scene.
You know, we've been talking about characters and stuff, and when we're going to move on to favorite scene, and of course that's when you give me that answer, it'll probably have to do with, you know, psychological content, but also feel free to say something about your favorite animated scene, because I suspect 80% plus of this was still Cell. And for me, I'm just hardcore Cell. I just, you know, one of my memories I'm slipping in is I have a friend who's in the LA world, movie maker, and he asked me one day, what's your favorite movie? And I said, dude, you're not going to like my answer because it's animated. But it was Princess Mononoke, right? And it's because of the screenplay. And some of the animation in this thing is just so, but still most of it's Cell. That's just, all right, I'll stop there because I'm going on. So Eric, you got to give us your character.
I kind of already did with Ashitaka.
Oh, okay, cool. Then let's move on. We'll go with Leandra first. Favorite scene.
Ugh. I don't even know like how people pick like one, but I will tell you the one that like has in all these years has always stuck out in my head. So there's that moment, and I can't say her name. What's the Irontown lady?
Eboshi.
Yeah, her. She says, you know, a wolf's head can still bite. And then there's that scene when everything goes down where the wolf's head like does bite off her arm.
Yes.
And I remember being like, yes, it will. And then she was like, I told you a wolf's head will still bite. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how can you be making a joke right now? Like your arm cut off by a wolf's head. And I just like there, and that's that levity that I was talking about with Toki that I really enjoy about women when they're being strong, is that they can still kind of not take themselves so seriously. And so in that moment, I got like the best of everything. One, karma. Two, you know, her kind of making a joke at her own expense. And then also it's a wolf head skittering across the ground and biting off someone's arm. Like that has to be, it has to be up.
How many times have you guys watched that scene and you're asking yourself, is that blood, death, life bubble cutting the wolf's head off as it goes across its, because you don't see any blood come out of the wolf.
You don't.
As that bubble's moving across, but you got to assume that it was getting its head cut off by that bubble, and then it takes off.
Or is Moro just such a like badass deity that she can just, you know, like
definitely great.
You know what? I was saving all my strength, and I had to go save my daughter, but I can still get what I want. Take this person's arm. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You're lucky
Gillian
I
Anderson.
only got your arm. That's what you're lucky.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, because she did say multiple times she wanted to bite her head off.
Mm-hmm.
Bite that
You
woman's head
couldn't
off.
quite get up there, right?
Right.
Like, but it was just great.
I just
All right.
missed.
But we're going to take a quick segue and just talk about the quality of the sub.
Oh,
Or,
man.
excuse me, the dub, excuse me. I mean,
That's- yeah.
even though you got people with Texas accents, people with English accents, it works.
Mm-hmm.
Jigo,
Well-
I have no problem with Jigo talking like a Texan. You
I
guys?
mean, I have
Right,
a problem
I mean-
with Billy Bob Thornton, but it's fine.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, if I may, this was sort of like the opening up of doors to American voiceover in Japanese animation. And now it's not that it wasn't done before that, but as Princess Mononoke was released in the United States, they made a conscious decision to redub it with name actors. And
Mm.
a little bit before with Armitage III, but Miyazaki had the name, Miyazaki had the clout. Now what they did, not a direct translation, but they rewrote it. They had Neil Gaiman rewrite the script and then record it. Oh yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. It makes
Yeah.
so much sense now.
It's for another time, another story.
Yeah.
And this was sort of a change, a shift in the sort of paradigm of voiceover in Japanese animation. They had a voice director, they had name actors, and while there are a lot of purists in subtitle and Japanese voiceover, even Japanese people, even Miyazaki will agree that this dub did it well, and it continues to do so in this context. Others, animation, usually it's a time crunch thing.
Right.
Who's available, cartoon voice actors and whatnot, but this one is different. And I will say that for this, while of course the Japanese is the original, I equally, if not slightly more, enjoy the dub.
I got
Yeah, I have to fully agree with that. I mean, having just watched, countless amounts of hours of anime, and it's so hard to get that dub right because, in Japan, the anime voice artists, they get the emotion right, they get the tone of voice right, they even get talking while eating, like it's just kind of ingrained, and the quality of voice actor, I feel like that the status that they give voice actors in Japan is almost as high as your regular actor. And that's why it's so good usually and hard to emulate, let alone trying to translate a language to another. And few animes get it right, and all the Studio Ghibli films for the most part do. And yeah, I agree with Rio. Like this one's spot on.
So let me follow up on that. Or go ahead, Eric. Go ahead.
Well, so it's interesting. I have an older copy of the DVD, so it only had one bonus, which I'm still getting over. I need one with more bonuses. But the feature that they were interviewing the cast of the English dub, and one of the things that the voice director said that they thought made a good voice actor was musical sensibilities. So I think specifically talked about Billy Bob Thornton, I guess, as a drummer. And so there's this issue of having this natural sort of inclination towards rhythm to be able to watch the animation, try to sync with the mouth movement, and get oneself in that mindset. There's like at least three levels of thinking there that has to go on.
And a good orator is able to capture the audience's cognitive and emotional thought and keep them all synchronized as they go through what they're doing. And that's definitely a skill. I was going to ask something. I'll edit this in a second. I know. Go ahead, Victor.
Well, I was going to actually say that the combination of cultural translations is highly impressive as well. To get the nuance, or seemingly, because as a non-Japanese individual who's not familiar with the totality of Japanese culture, I never would have guessed that that wasn't the case, nor did I ever suspect that there was any sort of stereotyping or negative, oh, we're just going to assume this is what they meant over there. There seemed to be an authenticity of the whole production that for an American, dub to do, that's got to be super hard. Like, you have to, be honest about the presentation, be honest about the characters and your understanding of it. And if you don't understand it,
yes,
honest about that so that you can be instructed in the right way. I think that's part of why our understanding of all the characters and their nuances are so specific, because they were that authentic.
And also they add some American flair at the same time that really works. So one scene that really comes to mind for me is the scene that Ashitaka is carrying San out of Irontown. He's with the two pups, and finally, he falls off of Yaku, and they're about to bite his head off. And I love when San wakes up, the whole thing happens, and then one of the pups is like, "What about the elk? Can I eat him?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, oh. That's brilliant. I don't think that was in the original.
Oh, my wife laughed at that last night. That was...
I thought you were going to go when the wolf runs over and grabs Ashitaka's head.
It's like,
so it's shaking him. And every time I see that, I go, ah!
No,
how is he still alive? Like,
exactly. So the quality of the dub, I'm going to go back to my earlier comment about this being a Rorschach test for people who can distinguish quality, because the quality of the actors, they were drawn to doing these roles. I think they recognized the quality of what was being done. Now, when they talk about it, they quite often, I would argue, maybe drop the ball a bit. But in the moment of being that character and voice-wise, I don't think they would have done it if they didn't really want to do. I'm sure they got paid, but I mean, the screenplay, when you can discern that level of quality, it's like, well, hell yes, I'm going to do this. You're going to pay me too? Damn, I'm in, right? And for like you were saying, Rio, for American actors, voice actors, this makes you a barrier breaker, right? You get to really break down walls and lead people into a genre that they may have laughed at yet because no one else had led them there. So I give all the credit to Claire Danes and Gillian Anderson and Billy Crudup. They really were barrier breakers and really said, yeah, I'm going to do this. This is good. And I think they did it because it was so good. So we're going to go on to favorite scene, and we're going to ask Victor.
So this was such a seriously impossible thing to try to figure out. So what I had to really think about was, what was the scene that first impacted me to what I was getting ready to experience? And that's when Nago first shows up. Okay, so here's the thing. I love scary movies. I adore them. And the thing that really gets me about scary movies is when people do normal things abnormally. So, I mean, even going back to The Exorcist, the spider walk is the thing that really freaks me out, because walking up the stairs is normal. You can walk up the stairs. But if you want to do it upside down, whoa, that's creeptastic. Yeah. So when Nago shows up and he's got all these things moving around on him, and then it peels back like Venom, right? Like a symbiote from Venom, and you see there's a figure in there, this giant boar, and then it goes back and then continues moving in this very man. it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying, but brilliant. It was one of those things where you're like, I don't like this, but I cannot look away. Exactly. I don't like it because it's working. It is absolutely terrifying. And the amount, because obviously, with an art background, I have a certification in commercial art. So, a study of animation was definitely a part of that. To think about, how do you animate all of these individual parts to work together seamlessly? That was immediately, I was like, this is about to be the greatest adventure I've ever seen. This is about to be something to behold. This is why they're only showing one every 3 hours in the theater, because you have to take the time to experience this. So I have to say that that's my favorite scene, because it was my eye opener of what I'm about to experience.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen this movie, but there's a point in the movie where suddenly you feel like no one had to do any writing. because everything's been set up that it just falls out.
This is just what it's supposed to go.
You're just witnessing a documentary, and that scene, and then when the guys in the skins are creeping along, oh my God, it is so terrifying. And those skins are so shallow. They're like death, even though they're people in them. It's really, really stunningly well done. Let's go to Rio. Favorite scene.
All right. Again, very difficult to choose one. But I guess something that was really sort of visually and thematically engaging for me was this sort of water or liquid motif throughout the film. We see it in all kinds of state, everything from like this sort of plasmic ooze to very quiet waters to this cloying mud-like, blood-like substance that sloughs off of people and things. And I think for me, sort of that all converged when Eboshi and Jigo and all of his men are going into the spirit forest as the Night Walker is becoming the Shishigami, the forest god, and the forest god is already sort of this nebulous creature coming into solid form, and then the very still water. Meanwhile, Okoto and Moro are both being consumed by this blood flowing squiggly stuff, and then at the very end, sort of skipping to the end of a very long scene, Eboshi's able to shoot the forest god, and then it bubbles into this sort of like jellyish liquid and sloughs off. So many things are happening. So many narrative points are converging in here. You got Ashitaka trying to save San out of Okoto's evil and falling into the water, and then when Eboshi shoots the spirit god and its expression, when it changes from that sort of composite to the animal for a second and comes back, and then after the shot, that bubble. It's just like themes and visuals all coming to this giant cacophonous climax.
Yes,
and describe it in words. It's just it's a force of nature, literally.
You really do feel like a witness.
Yeah.
Right. You just like, I'm just, oh my God, And when I was watching last night, when the forest spirit is shot the first time, it just takes a moment, sinks a little bit, and then puts its foot up on top of the water. Oh my God. That's just stunningly well done. Brilliant. And then, like you said, a couple minutes later, the embodiment of unintended consequences emerges, right? I mean, and it just goes everywhere. Oh, fantastic. Tatsu, favorite scene?
Yeah, I gotta say, and maybe it's a little cliche, but I love the scene when the deer god gets the head back, and the dead mountains and everything turns green. To this day, every time I watch it, I'm watching closely. I'm like, okay, what part of the mountain starts turning green first? I think at this point, I'm like, okay, like this animation's so dated, I can spot where exactly it starts turning green. I still can't. That's how brilliant it is, And I love that. I love that scene.
And it's so good because things don't come back as lush. So the colors are not as saturated. The vegetation's a bit thinner. And the music is nothing but a piano. Can you imagine being Joe Hayashi?
Serenity. Yeah.
I mean, it's just everything works. So you brought up the issue of being able to predict animation. I'm gonna. There's a scene where Ashitaka has been kissed by the forest spirit as he's bleeding out, and it becomes this bizarre sort of psychic montage. And then you see this little shrub with dewdrops in it. I bet you I can pick out the exact drop that falls on Ashitaka's face, only because I've seen it 30 times, right? But whenever I see that scene again, where's the drop? Where's the drop? And I kind of focus in the area about that thing. Yeah, I saw it. But no, who the hell draws a dewdrop, right? And okay. Eric,
every time you see something new, every time.
And that's all Miyazaki. I know he has a team, but I have to believe that's just all coming from him.
Well, and so that detail, and I'm going to lean on Victor here a little bit more as the visual artist expert, but I was reading a book by comics artist and scholar Scott McCloud recently, and he was talking about how to draw good backgrounds, right? And he said basically it was like the key is not to think of them as backgrounds.
Right.
Right. Think of them as like the universe that your character's inhabiting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so what are your thoughts on sort of that, Victor?
Well, Scott is right in that regard, because the thing is you have to look at them as elements, not as a separate feature, because a lot of times they are hard to do. They are the parts that require the most thought to put into to create a sense of realism. We can cartoon a figure and it's easy. How do you cartoon an environment? It's very difficult to do that and make it feel as though anything is supposed to belong in that space. If you look at like old cartoons that have a very unrealistic, no sense of verisimilitude to the backgrounds, the characters stand out in a very weird sort of way.
Right.
And it's very flat, despite the fact that it's supposed to create this three-dimensional plane. It doesn't do it. So by creating these backgrounds as specific elements, to have characteristics of their own, when the wind blows, the leaves will react differently than the hairs on people because it is a different element. That's what creates that sense of reality. You're like, oh yeah, that's absolutely the way a tree blows in the wind, but I don't move that same way. You believe it, but you have to put in that time and that care. And I'm sure for Miyazaki, he's got like a team of people that are dedicated to the vision. And it's not a matter of we have to get this thing out on a deadline, even though there are deadlines for sure, but quality is the most important part. Because anybody that would put their name on something like that, you've got to be like, no, it has to reach this level or it doesn't go.
Right.
It's that simple.
And
so dare I say, one of the things that might make it so good, right, is that attention to detail, that gestalt. Like, this wasn't one of my quote unquote favorite scenes, but sort of playing off of what Tatsu was talking about. I remember when they first introduced Irontown, right, and I think it's a pan down, but I just remember this time around being struck by how much intricate detail from the far back to the mid-ground to,
Another thing about Miyazaki's backgrounds, if you want to call him, I would argue he's a master of scale. And what I mean is when we're sitting at our desk, we can bring different objects at different distances into focus. And so we're dealing with different scales. And by manipulating scale that well, you can really engender a sense of embeddedness, the small, the huge, and I'm in this in a mid sort of way. And I guarantee you, I would love to see how much scrap animation ends up on the floor. How many scenes get animated? Because with live actors, you just do it again, right? And then you edit it all together. But with animation, it's like, no, that doesn't work. That gesture comes across too fast. And I guarantee he's pretty clear about what he wants and probably does a lot himself.
Yeah, I mean, you get a sense of that if you watch any of the extras or documentaries that kind of cover his work. Like, the people that work with him are kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's what the boss wants, And he's like, yeah, I expect a lot, but that's the way it goes.
Well, that's how they learn, man. Right? They learn by him saying no.
But I just watched it again, and one thing that I noticed that just goes along with all of this is, I forget what scene exactly, but they're at the Irontown, at the walls, at one of the like pieces of wood that's carved, right? Completely background, but you look at it, it's at night. You look at it, the lighting's completely right. The shavings are completely right. It's just so on point. And that's what I just love about it,
Or when Ashitaka rips that tree out of the roof, and just thousands or hundreds of shards go flying. And that was not CGI. Every one of those was drawn by hand. So Eric, give us your favorite scene.
I got two, but they're both brief. The first, which is when one of the many limbs that goes flying,
Mm.
is when Ashitaka's being chased by the hunters,
Mm.
and he's just killed 2 of them,
Yeah.
right? And he's like telling them to go back, right? One shoots an arrow at him, he grabs it and shoots it back, and dude's head flies off, right? And what does the other guy do? Just turns around and rides
Yo,
away.
I'm out, baby.
Smartest
Exactly, like I heard Cartman's
ever.
voice in my head. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
It's
So
like
just-
taking heads off.
Like,
The
One of
sound
the-
effect. The sound effect. You know?
May I say,
Oh,
the amount
my
of
gosh.
decapitations and
Yeah.
dismemberments, and there's like no blood, right?
None.
I mean, I used to watch a lot of other animes where, just like I think of The Bride, help me.
Oh, Kill
Kill
Bill.
Bill. Kill Bill, right? Where just
Mhm.
geysers of blood, right? This, no. Iboshi's arm gets bitten off. No blood. Nothing at all.
Yeah. Well, that arrow's traveling so fast, it just
Right.
cauterizes the wound.
Yeah,
Oh,
just-
okay, well, there you go. There you
There
go.
it is. Like a lightsaber. See, that's the actual Star Wars
Damn, that-
connection. See?
I did not make that connection 20-some
Boom,
years
that's what
ago.
I'm here
man.
for,
That's
baby.
exactly what you're here for.
The force is strong with Ashitaka.
Exactly. So is that your scene, Eric?
Yeah, that was one. The second one, which is a little bit more poignant, is when San and Ashitaka first sort of make eye contact, right? When San is sucking the blood out of Maro's neck and spitting it, and she turns, and it's this. Well, the phrase we used earlier is beautiful ugliness, right? And actually, I'm sort of ripping that from Moro when she calls San her beautiful ugly daughter.
She certainly
Right? I mean,
does.
it's just this amazing drawing, this breathtaking image. San is beautiful, but she's covered in blood, right? I mean, and it's this juxtaposition that I think is just really, really poignant.
And the dialogue is stunning. Ashitaka, oh, they saw me. Okay, I'm going to jump on a tree and give you this huge description of who I am. And she says, go away.
I love that though, because that she looks at him while holding the blood in her mouth and then spits it sideways the same way that my uncle spits chew. And I just remember watching that and being like, oh, she is a badass.
She's been doing this for a while.
That's right. She don't even care about you. What else?
Okay, guys, I'm going to give you my favorite scene. My favorite scene is the kiss, the ultimate kiss of all time when San feeds Ashitaka. No one has taken care of Ashitaka. As a matter of fact, he's been kicked out, right?
Mhm.
And so he's off on his own. He's doing his noblest best to be a good guy. He gets shot through the back. And then this woman basically feeds him like a bird. What makes that scene work for me is what happens with his right arm and his right leg when she contacts his lips. His arm and leg move up. And it's clear you can make whatever interpretation you want, that maybe he was surprised, but I also believe Miyazaki was going for something mildly sensual there, in the sense that I don't think Ashitaka has been kissed. And so this is this incredibly complex, nurturing, pseudo-sexual moment of just pure, dare I say, young adult love. And then he cries, right? And it's just all the things that had to be in place to see that work. For me, was like, if I ever write anything that well, I will think I've accomplished something. That scene is, for me, an accomplishment. Let's go ahead. Okay, let's do favorite lines. Oh, sorry about that. Favorite lines
There's
here.
a wolf's head right there coming to get you.
We'll start with Rio.
Sure. Well, my favorite line comes near the end of the film, and it's Jigo who says, "Well, I give up. You can't win against fools." Like I was saying earlier with Jigo, he's the man with a plan. He's got his entrance and his exit strategy already, and then basically the world explodes around him. But what does he do? Well, that's the way it goes, I guess. Let's move on. Next thing. It's just very interesting because one of my other favorite lines is earlier in the film when he talks about, it's Ashitaka and him around a campfire and they're eating, and he's describing the scene around him. Oh, this used to be a village. They died of a fire or a flood, whatever it was. They died. We're surrounded by these cursed spirits, and nobody cares. So you say you're cursed. Well, so's the world. And it just sort of brings to light this sort of, I don't know, human perseverance that is definitely a theme throughout, even with the leper who says something like, life's tough, life is suffering, but we just find a way to go on. Later on, Toki says, at least we're alive. We'll make it work. Something like that. And just the continuation of life, no matter what, and no matter how we look at the movie, we have to look at it from the perspective of mankind. We are humans observing this artwork, no matter how many layers we peel away. So for me, that sort of just gave me hope after some of my favorite lines being so sort of poisonous and toxic and venomous to our existence, that life is suffering, life is bad, we're all cursed to repeat our same mistakes. But you know what? Life still goes on until it doesn't. Let's move on to the next thing. And I think he sort of just that's why I think Jigo goes full circle in a great way in the story. And I love that last line.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Victor, what's your favorite line?
So we've actually referenced it before. It's the Lady Boshi's cut off a wolf's head and it still has the power to bite. The reason for that, though, is not the essence of the line inside the movie. It's actually it's a parable to me. It is a sentiment that you take with you. It's something that you hear, and it affects how you interact with other people, where you realize that, what is the wolf? The wolf is anything that you are trying to take down. And even in the act of taking it down, you could still lose with its ferocity or whatever. And it was one of those things where, because of that, I have this sentiment now where in order for me to win doesn't mean that you have to lose. And it kind of informs that idea, because if I try to kill you, if I try to take you out, I could very well lose myself in the process. Yes. And there is no sense in that. There is no reason to risk it all in that way. There's no one that is a big enough enemy to me that I should make them the wolf, that I could risk myself trying to stop them. At best, if I'm going to stop them, just achieve what they couldn't do, become the wolf, as opposed to make them the wolf. So that's why it's my favorite line, because it just, something about it just rang to my core, where I was like, yeah, don't cut off the wolf's head, because it'll still get you. You're right.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Fantastic.
Yeah, it definitely got me.
That's all. Eric, favorite line?
I'm going to go back to the beautiful ugly reference that Moro is describing San, because what sort of struck me last night during that moment is San is very conflicted about her identity, right? I mean, so she's obviously this trope of a human raised by animals is something that shows up cross-culturally. In this context, so she's sort of not a wolf or a non-human animal, and she's not a human per se either. I mean, in terms of the way she sees herself, she loves Ashitaka, but she's burying her head in Moro's fur and saying, "No, I hate all humans." Right? She's dealing with these conflicted aspects of herself. And there has to be some amount of seeing herself through the eyes of the other, but almost like a couple different levels, right? Because I imagine that when she's talking with the other animals, for example, she has to pretend that, or she has to sort of prove that she's not just like all the other humans, right? But also vice versa. I mean, I imagine that she's thinking of herself, what do the humans think of me? What do the other animals think of me? And she cares what Ashitaka thinks of her. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot going on there, a lot of self-dissonance that she's working.
Yeah, going through the movie and thinking about the different characters, I'm not certain. I mean, why it was named Mononoke Heim. In other words, I'm assuming that the Japanese name also refers to her character.
It
right?
does.
So Princess of the Spirits or something along those lines.
Full spirit. Yeah, and
Yeah.
Hime is a sort of honorific for a princess. There were actually 2 considerations for the title, though.
Mm,
One was the Legend of Ashitaka, and the other
mm,
is Mononoke Hime, the princess
yeah.
of the wildlings, basically.
So here's what I'm going to do. Earlier, I talked about Ashitaka not having an arc. I think the major arc of the show is actually history. I think it's the moving away from a world of gods to a world of humans. And because the real change that comes about isn't the characters, it's the world that those characters live in and the fact that they no longer believe in gods, right? And now what does it mean to live in a world without gods? Well, you build Irontown, right? I mean, so I just had this thought last night, because I have never seen a movie where the arc was the story, wasn't a particular character. It was the times they were living in. And I don't think Miyazaki had that thought at all, but damn, if that makes any sense, that's a hell of an accomplishment.
Well, so got a few, because I'm totally nerding out here. I have a few anime scholarship books. And I know that at least a couple quotes from Miyazaki. One, he did describe this as a battle of humanity against the wild gods.
Mm-hmm.
But there was another quote that I found that was sort of Miyazaki speaking to his general portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
But he says, "I've come to the point where I just can't make a movie without addressing the problem of humanity as a part of an ecosystem."
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
see, because I would have said that in terms of a narrative, it's the correction of that understanding. It seems like for the most part, while Jigo and everyone in Irontown has an understanding that there are gods, they don't consider them the powerful beings that they quote unquote should. And Ashitaka's presence kind of reaffirms what these gods should be considered as. These aren't things to be conquered. These are things that you find a way to balance with, or else you will destroy everything. Like you have to, kind of in that sense of traditionalism, you have to go back to the traditional ideas that they're supposed to be here just as much, if not more so, than you're supposed to be here, because they keep the balance for everything. They, they are the necessary. You are the temporary, the nature, God, all of that. That is the necessary. You disrupt that and everything goes bad.
This is his one movie, I think, that really addresses the issues with Japanese history without Western influence. So it's really hitting at that, the Japanese Aboriginal people, but those are the Emishi, right? That's the name that he gives for them. Which is a true story. The people came into the peninsula, drove them to the edge, and they lived secretively from there. And it really hits at, Japan is traditionally a culture that puts a lot of importance and pride in nature. Shintoism comes from the belief that there are spirits and gods and mountains and trees and everything. And it's really coming at odds with industrialism. Industrialism coming in. Can you have both? Can you live together? Is there a way to synchronize that? And in the end, it's maybe, I don't know, but he does a brilliant job of kind of bringing that together, I think.
Well, because that's the way it ends, right? I mean, yes, Irontown is destroyed, but they're going to rebuild, right? And
Hiboshi's going to rebuild. I mean, let's make it clear. It takes her force of will to do it again. Yeah.
Yeah, but Hiboshi even says we're going to build it better, right? Now, what does better mean? Well, I suppose we're left at the idea of trying to find that balance, because it very easily could have said, hey, let's just wipe this all out and the green is all going to come back better. You could very easily say industrialism sucks. nature provincialism is the way to go. But they didn't stay there, right? So maybe it's an ambivalence.
So
right,
no, I'm gonna throw out the potentially controversial statement that what Miyazaki has a bit of a geeko vibe in the sense of life is going to continue. That's the thing we need to focus on, right? And these things we want to call good and bad, they're going to happen. But live, and that's Ashitaka's last line. He wants us to live, right? So it's not nihilist though. It's very much this wonderful, hyper complex, non-resolvable, just live, which is what life is, right? That's why for me it's just a crazy accomplishment that you don't get to say one character had the story. Let's go into Leandra. What was your favorite line?
So mine's actually really early in the movie when it's the wise woman and everyone's all like, he's our prince, we can't kick him out. And she says, you can't change your fate, but you can rise to meet it if you choose to do so. And I think that, I don't know why it hits me so hard every time, but I feel like every time I watch this movie, I hear that line when I need to hear it. You know, and so I think with everything going on, we could let, whether it's pandemic or police brutality or just the craziness of the world just happen, or we can rise to meet it. And I think that everyone needs to hear that at some point, that there are things that you can control and there's things that you can't. And I think in the story of Ashitaka, you know, he does rise to meet it, and in doing so, like, he does change. Right? Like the fate does change. Maybe, I don't know, it's always happened that way, but I think that is something that you have to rise. And I think and I don't know, part of it might be just I was raised Southern Baptist. I do not practice that anymore, but there's always that answering the call. When you hear it, you answer the call. And I think that carries on now, is when you feel the need to make action. Do you just sit there and let it pass because it's comfortable, or do you rise? And I think that we have to remember that that's what Taka does. And
he changes what fate is through his being, right? My experience with that kind of thing happens most when I talk to graduate students, and they're kind of stunned at how well they get along with all the other graduate students. And it's like, wait a minute, guys, you all came here from all over the place for the same reason. So there's something about you that's the same already. And this idea that we actually change the context within which we exist by existing and recognizing. And for me, that's what the big black bubble coming out of the forest spirit is. Everything matters. There's nothing that doesn't matter. And every single thing changes the context. So the idea that we know what's going to happen and we live according to that is kind of a curse. Tatsu, favorite line?
Yeah, so I mean, definitely one of my favorite lines. Rio already touched on. So you think you're cursed? Well, so what? So is the whole world. You know, I love that. Love that. But yeah, a couple of maybe not even so much lines, but just kind of a very, very like nuancy sort of lines. One is Ashitaka's carrying the injured guy into the forest. This is the one scene, I think, where Ashitaka's, you know, not just being, you know, pure hero, not being angry for the sake of being the one with the eyes unclouded. He's talking to the little spirit that's leading him. He goes, "Hey, little guy, are you actually leading us anywhere, or are you just getting us more lost?" And you can see it in his face. He's a little pissed off. really, really, like, yeah. And he's like, I don't know, you know? But I felt like it was like the one scene that Ashitaka's character like cracks a little bit, you know? I don't know, just personally. But the other scene line, I guess, has no words. It's Lord Okoto walking up to Ashitaka, and Ashitaka's trying to talk to him, and he goes, "Shut up."
Yeah.
Okay, enough said. You know?
I love it.
I love that one. He's like, I'm I'm older than you. I'm wiser than you. I'm more superhuman than you. Don't worry
Yes.
about it, kid.
Stay at bay, boy. Let me smell you. And
Yeah.
David Keith, come on.
Oh,
Yes.
man,
Oh,
come on.
Oh,
Like I wanted Lord Atoka to have more lines just to
Yeah.
hear Goliath a little bit more.
my warriors, like
yes. Oh my God. So my favorite line has already been mentioned by Rio, but it's the line that I think, and I'm going to quote it. It's a little long, but the last phrase of it I want to talk to you guys about. So it's when Boshi's revealing all of her dark secrets to Ashitaka, and he recognizes that she's having these lepers build guns to kill the forest, and she goes, "Not only have you taken his, now you're building more guns to kill them. What else do you want? How much more killing do you need?" And they get into conversation about his arm, and will that arm have to kill us all, and blah 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 blah. And they're having their power struggle. And then the old leper laying on the floor says, "Forgive me, my lady, but you must not make light of the boy's strength. Young man like you, I know what rage feels like, and grief and helplessness. But you must not take your revenge on Lady Eboshi. She's the only one who saw us as human beings. We are lepers. The world hates and fears us, but she took us in and washed our rotting flesh and bandages us. Life is suffering. It is hard. The world is cursed, but still you find reasons to keep living. Sorry, I'm making no sense." That last sentence, "sorry, I'm making no sense," for me is Miyazaki talking to us, and I think he's talking to the Western world, because what he's done in that phrase is give us this beautifully ugly, highly contradictory description of life. And then to say, "I'm making no sense," means rationalists won't get this. Right? People looking
Right.
for a clear sense of logic will not get what I'm saying. So I'm telling you, I'm making no sense, which is my way of saying to you, you don't make any sense because you think life is supposed to be linear and clear when in fact it's beautifully ugly.
Mhm.
If I ever had the opportunity to ask Hayao Miyazaki a question, it would be, was that you saying that line? Because "I'm making no sense" serves no purpose other than to editorialize who the audience might be, as opposed to what he wanted to say. I just love that line.
Would that be the analog of the modern "not saying, just saying"?
Yep.
Yeah,
Definitely.
So here we got a last little thing to do here. I want each of you to tell me which character you think you're most like. I'm going to start it off just so people feel comfortable doing this. I'm going to tell you that I am Ashitaka. I go through the world. I ask everybody, what's it like to be you today? I take on their suffering, and I find ways to keep moving if I have to, just like Ashitaka did. And I thoroughly find myself encouraging others to find themselves, even if it's not who I am. I remember being 21 years old in a science class on perception, hearing this professor talk philosophy and the science of the brain, and I'm thinking, for Christ's sake, I'm never going to be able to do that. And I went to his office hours, and he sat there and listened to me, and he patiently corrected me. I ended up working with him for 6 years, and if he hadn't pitched if he hadn't presented himself at that A level, I would have had nothing to aspire to. I would have seen it in books, but I wouldn't have seen someone living it. And so for me, and what that did for me, I'm going to live that wonder, I guess. And so that those who are at that age and think that they could never do this, see someone doing it. And then you say, well, dude, I've been doing it for 30 years. I should be pretty good at it. But I usually go a little more self-deprecating. But on this one, I'm going to say I'm Ashitaka. Eric, who are you, man?
I would say probably from the Ashitaka as well, mostly just because of the attempt to try to learn and help other people get along as much as possible, sometimes when it's a fool's errand. And there may be other times where I'm more like his red elk, where like, I'm just doing what I gotta do. Don't bother me with everything beyond that.
Yeah, gotta move. Tatsu, who are you most like?
It's hard to say. I mean,
Hey man, we can all be Ashitaka, right? There's no problem.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's plenty in Ashitaka that I identify with, but you know, I don't know if I feel like as much of a saint as Ashitaka.
Oh, he was a killer, man.
Hey,
I mean, he was a killer.
sometimes I feel like the leper guy that's, you know, just putting his head down, trying to make this gun, but you know, having a good time at the good sense of humor at the same time. You know, Iboshi's like, hey, I'm gonna have some wine brought to you later on. He's like, oh, that'll be nice. You know, you know, I feel like that's a lot of us. I feel like I'm a collection of characters, and you know that like Eric's saying, that includes Yaku just being like, you know, let me just do my thing, and there's things about Sam that I can really identify with, you know, which is you know, being stubborn, wanting to do something my way, absolutely, until there's an Ashitaka that tells me, hey, like, chill out, you know.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Okay, Rio, how about you?
Well, I had, you know, mentioned earlier about relating to Jigo a bit, and I do stand by that to a degree. I think philosophically speaking, you know, I will prevail, I will survive, I will persist, and you know, I can't keep up with all these fools. But at the same time, I think, what character am I most like? I think I'm a Kuroku. Who is the ox herdsman in town. You know, just sort of existing, not entirely bad, not entirely good, living by the grace of others, especially his strong wife.
Tatsu's laughing or something we don't know.
There's a strong woman behind him.
Is that what it is? Okay.
She's walked by a couple times. We saw her.
Exactly. She was tapping on her watch. I wasn't sure what that meant.
Serving in other ways. But just sort of, I don't know. I'm a character. I exist. But am I a hero? No. Will I survive? Prevail? Probably. Yeah.
There you go. Leandra.
So I'm the wife. The hard wife.
Say that one more time. I didn't come through.
I said I'm the wife. I'm the strong wife, the mean wife. So I'm Taki, or Taka, however you say it. Just the fact that she's kind of humorous, and like, I think when she first sees her husband, she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're okay," and then the media flips to like, "What the heck?" Like, I feel like that's kind of my go-to. She's also very calm under pressure, makes a really good like second lead, like not the leader, but like a good second, very dependable, very loyal. So I think just humor and kind of the way she looks at the world. But I will say, when it comes to Sun, I have never identified more with a character than watching her look at Ashitaki and be like, so you go do you, I'm gonna go do me, you can visit sometimes. Like, that, if I could pick a moment to be like, that's me, like, I feel like I've had that conversation so much. Like, the strong woman behind it, it's like, you do what you need to do with yourself. I'm gonna do what I need to do, and it'll work out. Like,
you go help him build that cute little Iron Town, okay? I'm gonna hang out.
But I am not forgiving that bitch.
So, Victor, who are you?
So I take a very different approach. I feel like I'm most like Shishigami, the Force Spirit.
There you go.
Yeah, I feel like as a vessel of creativity, there's a lot of things that I could do to bring life into this world. I also understand full well that I have the potential for absolute destruction to those around me. On a business sense, it's kind of funny. I've been told that I'm the Kevin Bacon of the comic book industry, where you could literally go 6 degrees and there's no one that wouldn't know who I am or know someone who knows me. And I feel like the Forest Spirit is very similar. It's this mythical thing that everyone kind of knows about, but no one's actually seen. And then, you know, somebody sees it and go, wait, that's the Forest Spirit right there. I get it. randomly in my career. So I feel like that's who I am is I've got this huge potential that I have to figure out how to live up to, but just kind of coolly going about it. Just kind of, yeah, I'm a forest spirit. What's up? How you doing?
Now that you mention it, I'm not sure I've ever really seen you during daytime. So
it's dark outside now. That's all I'm saying.
There you go.
That's all I'm saying.
So that about wraps it up for us. Thanks to this wonderful panel for talking about my favorite movie of all time. Panelists, please tell the audience where they can find you on social media, and we'll start with Rio.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at I Know Rio, spelled just like it sounds.
All right. Tatsu?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram as well. Newly joined. Tatsushi, that's TAT Sushi 1892.
Okay. Eric?
Well, you can't find me on Instagram on principle. No. But you can find me on Illinois State University's Department of Psychology webpage, as well as my essays on cult films on go to the Normal Theater. .org and Film Culture, cult, all caps, as well as going to WGLT Psych Geeks.
Excellent. Victor, how about you?
You can find me on pretty much any form of social media at Vantage In-House through my publishing imprint, vantageinhouse.com. You could also check out You Create Comics. That's the letter U, CRE, the number 8, comics.com, which is my imprint that helps kids make comics and showcase the value of education therein.
Fantastic. And how about you, Leandra?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Parris Leandra, at PARRISLEANDRA.
Excellent. And you can find me on Twitter at Jordan Jam Party. And you can find all episodes of Dark Loops, Why Is This So Good, on this YouTube channel on the Dark Loops production page. If you want to leave feedback about this podcast, please leave it below on this YouTube page or send a message to darkloopsproductions@gmail.com. We'll be sure to read it at the end of our next podcast. So there it is. From all of us to all of you, big hugs. And remember, you cannot change fate.
However,
you can
rise to meet it if you so
choose.
Bye-bye.
And now, the bonus content.
Okay, so there's a question that I wanted to ask everyone, and maybe Victor, as the forest god, you can answer this question. Did the forest god know all along? And this is sort of my conspiracy theory throughout the whole thing. The forest god knows the comings and goings of the gods, and it is the god of life and death. It is the one that allowed Nago to leave the forest with its hatred, with its curse, to find Ashitaka by fate.
Mm-hmm.
Did the forest god know when and how it was going to die in order to allow humanity to see a way that was not mutually destructive for man and nature to coexist?
Okay, so this is good bonus material.
Yeah. I would say from a Western Christian philosophy, absolutely.
Rio, you gotta go, man.
Right. But no, I definitely think the forest god did, because the point of what was supposed to happen was a better cohabitation for nature and progress. That's the issue here, was progress was happening and they were forgetting nature's role. And by allowing this to happen, everybody saw it again, like, wait, we have to consider nature in our progress. And the forest god was like, you're welcome. That's
He's almost so smug through the whole thing. Like, he knows more. Like, he's just walking around, smiling at people, kissing them.
I absolutely love this question. Let me throw another. I don't know if it's the same or not. But Dutch philosopher Spinoza was reacted to René Descartes' distinction between soul and matter. Mm-hmm. And he argued that God is infinite. Therefore, since God is infinite, we are all, in a sense, what he called aspects of God. So all the things that the Christians partitioned into two different things, matter versus soul, he said that was in both of us. It gives rise to what's called double aspect ontology. We have soul, we have matter in us.
Is that ex machina? No. I'm thinking of something else. Sorry.
No, it's okay. The thing is, I think the forest spirit is kind of just an embodiment of reality, and the smugness which is there, right? Because he gets shot through the neck and just kind of smiles at her, and then he tries to make vines grow on her gun. There's a certain inevitability to how energy is going to be transferred to sustain life. And as the human species develops these other ways of destructing things to create more energy to pump through human life, that older way of sustaining life and how it harvested energy is just inevitably going to change, because the common principle is energy. How do you extract it? And then what does that extraction do to what you are? And for me, what I love about it is there is, and Tatsu and I talk about this when we talk about Sebald's Rings of Saturn, we are inherently cursed to be creative entropy engines. You know, we can't exist without destruction, and it just happens at multiple scales all the time. And I thought this movie was, for me, just a brilliant philosophical statement. Stop beating yourself up against being alive and causing destruction, because that's your curse, and find an adult, respectable way to do it. So that was my, go ahead, man.
I got to head out though. So.
Okay. Well, that was a great question.
No, yeah, that's a great question. But
you.
to answer yours, Scott, that's the circle of life. That's Lion King. It tells you that.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
flat out.
Without the genetic determinism, I might add, right?
Bye, Rio.
Take care,
Pleasure.
Rio. Good to meet you, man.